sometimes don't put God in the equation. He's very real. He's very, very real in this fight. Right now, as we speak, he's taking America down. Now, you don't control no weather. But God is whooping the hell out of America. This dollar that you've been fighting each other over, just falling. So there's another force here that's bigger than him.
Now in a state of emergency as the governor deploys the National Guard for help.
This is a very serious storm.
Up to 6 feet of snow and climbing. First responders carrying patients to the hospital on foot. The snow's so deep in some places, snowmobiles can't operate.
It's probably heavier than anything that we have seen in over 40 years.
From the sky, a wall of white. On the ground,
that is the garage door.
The snow is piling so high, so fast, it comes crashing into this home.
It's horrendous. It really is. We're going to make history.
The snowfall up to 5 inches an hour, crippling emergency personnel. At a firehouse in the heart of the storm, a mother delivers her baby girl.
We could not get her to the hospital. She was born. She's safe and she's healthy.
Near Buffalo, an 81-year-old man died after first responders were unable to get him to the hospital in time. The man, one of 3 people dying from cardiac arrest Tuesday while shoveling.
Have you noticed the amount of tornadoes that are striking? Have you noticed the weather pattern getting more and more dangerous? America, this is because of the wicked plots that you are planning against our people. And I must hasten to tell you, the God that I serve knows the plans that you have in mind for me and the nation of Islam. So the more you hatch your plans, keep watching how terrific these calamities are going to be.
Breaking news tonight as we come on the air. Hurricane Arthur upgraded to a Category 2 storm with 100-mile-an-hour winds, forcing mandatory evacuations along North Carolina's Outer Banks.
The hurricane has hit North Carolina's coast along with Boston and the state of Maryland. Tens of thousands of people are without power as Hurricane Arthur lashes the U.S. East Coast with high winds and a lot of rain.
Came ashore in North Carolina late Thursday. Ocracoke Island is completely dark right now. Thousands of 4th of July holiday vacationers essentially abandoned beachside lodgings in the region. You can see some of the waves as the storm moved in.
This is the earliest in the season a hurricane has ever made landfall in North Carolina.
And there's something else. The team at NOAA reminding us at least 3 storms, 1996, 2002, and now 2014, all named Arthur, all taking aim at North Carolina.
The flood situation in southeast Saskatchewan and southwest Manitoba remains dire. Nearly 90 communities are under states of emergency and hundreds of people have been forced out of their homes. Saskatchewan Premier Brad Wall got a bird's eye view of Melville, one of the worst hit areas north of Regina. About 150 patients have been relocated from the local hospital to a nearby community center. In Manitoba, a mandatory evacuation order remains in place in Wallace. At least 17 rivers and streams in the province are now at historic levels.
The river is expected to rise more than a meter by the end of next week, toppling a record set 3 years ago. Back then, the problem was a spring melt. This time around, too much rain. No one expected this in July. In fact, few of the communities have sand to sandbag with, which is why Manitoba has called in the Army.
The new stretch of storms from Nebraska to Maine targeting 65 million people. At least a dozen tornadoes already deployed against Iowa yesterday with a kind of savage beauty. Bold lightning strikes in Wyoming from the clouds overhead to the city below.
Tonight, more than 65 million Americans remain in the storm zone. In North Dakota, hail and winds strong enough to flatten this trailer. An EF1 tornado packing winds of 110 miles per hour in western Michigan mangled homes and brought down trees. Up and down the Mississippi, cones of caution. They're bracing for more rain. Flooding already forcing the closure of several roads and bridges, while Utah and California could use more rain to battle blazes. Outside of San Francisco, more than 6,000 acres have already burned.
A newborn baby is among at least 5 people killed after a strong earthquake struck the border between Guatemala and Mexico on Monday. Much of the damage from the 6.9 magnitude quake was reported in the Guatemalan region of San Marcos. The baby died when the roof of the local hospital collapsed. The tremor brought down power lines and triggered landslides blocking roads.
Particularly San Marcos, a municipality in North Guatemala, was very much affected by this. 90 buildings were damaged. 40 of those severely so, according to the disaster response unit.
Strong winds and heavy rain leave Okinawans knee-deep in floodwaters. One of the biggest storms to hit Japan this summer.
Just look at the video. It says it all. Slamming into Japan this morning. Typhoon Neoguri is being called the region's most powerful storm in decades. It's packing the equivalent strength of a Category 3 hurricane. More than 600,000 people have been told to evacuate as 40-foot waves and 125-mile-an-hour winds are expected on the island of Okinawa.
In central Japan, also saw roughly 70 millimeters of rain per hour, the heaviest rain recorded in the region in the month of July.
Earth's outer layer that protects us from solar radiation blasts is reportedly weakening 10 times faster than scientists thought it would. The European Space Agency's 3-satellite swarm constellation has revealed Earth's magnetic field is rapidly weakening, with the biggest decline in strength occurring over the Western Hemisphere. Scientists are not 100% sure why the area is weakening at such a fast rate, but the shift is a pretty big deal.
The Earth's magnetic field has shielded the planet from the sun's deadly radiation for billions of years, enabling life to take hold and flourish.
There is some good news, though. In areas over the Indian Ocean, the magnetic field has actually strengthened. Scientists believe the weakening might indicate that Earth's magnetic poles are getting ready to flip, which happens once every 300,000 years or so. No evidence shows that the poles flipping has caused any harm to life on Earth, but it could affect power grids and communication satellites.
Geomagnetic reversal. There are no certainties in life, but you can always trust in north and south. Except
The Earth's weakening magnetic field means we could be in the first phases of a geomagnetic reversal, where the poles actually flip. Doomsayers theorize it'll cause shifting continents, solar storm vulnerability, accelerated climate change, and mass extinctions. Scientists say no way. It's happened before and the Earth survived. But they do admit it'd disrupt technology something fierce.
If we look in detail, we can actually see a couple of further shocks, much smaller, which are little aftershocks.
Measuring a magnitude of 4.2, today's earthquake was the biggest recorded in the Channel Islands, as far as the Met Office are aware of. It happened just before 1 o'clock. Weather forecasters had no warning. The earthquake happened 6 to 8 miles off the southwest coast of Jersey here at Corbière, but it was felt across the Channel Islands, and we've had reports it even reached as far as France and the southwest of England.
Thousands of dead fish are washing up on Oahu shores, and the calls are starting to pour in. It's a problem that we first flagged last week when reports began coming in from Waikiki.
Surfers told them that they're also floating in the water. Todd Wilson describes the fish having small wings and invading our beaches by the hundreds. And just last week, what appears to be the same kind of dead fish littered Nanakuli Beach, where hundreds of fish called gurnad covered the sand. They'll continue to watch the situation, and right now the samples taken from last week are being studied under a microscope, and experts don't have a solid explanation of why or what is causing them to come on shore, but suggest it could be part of a spawning cycle.
Beachgoers in Russia got more than a bit of a suntan when a freak storm sent them running and screaming for cover.
The skies opened and a freak storm pelted the erstwhile sun worshippers with giant hailstones.
Wind swept across the beach and temperatures suddenly dropped from about 40 to 22 degrees Celsius.
Many central areas have had snow and freezing temperatures. At a lakeside resort not far from Novosibirsk, 2 girls died when a tree fell on their tent as they sheltered from the latest storm.
Because of the number of Americans who will be affected by severe weather across a wide area, 80 million people, tonight here we begin with a rare meteorological event. This past winter, as you may remember, we all had to learn that new term, polar vortex, the super cold air that pushed to the south over North America. Well, something similar to that is happening this week, only in July, and the dramatic temperature extremes are firing off storms as they go.
Most surprising, that massive cool down now underway in the Midwest and Northern Plains, 20 degrees below normal. A big story on the noon news in Minneapolis today.
It is 60 degrees midday, mid-July, obviously not normal.
Scientists have now launched an investigation into a giant crater that suddenly appeared in a remote part of Siberia.
That hole is 260 feet wide, and nobody knows exactly how deep that thing is. Look at that, just goes down and down and down and down, and it's a dark hole.
It's still a mystery as to what caused it, and Russian scientists will arrive today to try to determine what caused the hole.
Even stranger, the area of Russia where the crater is said to have formed is ominously called the end of Earth. Although the latest crater was discovered just recently, researchers say the permafrost surrounding it indicates it could be several years old. Even scientists cannot agree on a single probable reason for the massive crater.
Almost 150,000 people have been evacuated from their homes in the Philippines after a typhoon swept through the capital.
Nearly 100 people were killed in the Philippines last week when Typhoon Ramasun roared through, raising doubts about efforts to end the heavy tolls from storms that are only expected to get more intense as the global climate changes.
Super Typhoon Ramasun has made its landfall in Wenchang City in South China's island province of Hainan. Ramasun had strengthened to a super typhoon by about 5 a.m. on Friday, bringing strong gales and heavy rain as it approached the areas.
And the death toll from Typhoon Ramasun in China continues to climb as floods and landslides triggered by the storm create a deadly mess in Vietnam. Chinese state media reports 26 people have died and 25 are missing in the provinces of Hainan, Guangdong, Yunnan, and Guangxi.
after the strongest storm in 4 decades pounded the southern region with violent winds and downpours. China's Ministry of Civil Affairs says more than 8 million people were affected as electricity and water supplies were also cut. The storm then headed to Vietnam, making landfall in Lang Son province over the weekend near the border with China. At least 12 people are said to have died there as Ramasun barreled through homes and crops.
This is video shot by a man in North Carolina of a meteor falling out of the sky. The video was shot last night, and many of you also contacted us asking about a loud boom and a light seen streaking across the sky.
Looks like it passed right over central Virginia.
It was spotted across several states, including Pennsylvania, Delaware, and New Jersey.
The sun appears to be taking a nap of sorts, and space geeks are wondering, where did all the sunspots go?
Spaceweather.com calls it the all-quiet event. According to the site's Dr. Tony Phillips, on July 17th, there were no sunspots at all. On the 18th, this photo shows only 3 tiny sunspots. This sunspot die-off comes after a, quote, whole slew of sunspots from July 1st through the 10th, according to NASA. To have a spotless day during a solar maximum is odd, but then again, this solar maximum we're in has been very wimpy. The solar maximum is a period of greatest solar activity in the 11-year solar cycle. Sunspots are regions of intense magnetic activity. No one knows how long this quiet period will last. Phillips said, quote, you just can't predict the sun.
The Maunder minimum, of course, was a period of almost no sunspots at all for decades, and we saw a really dramatic period where there were very cold winters in the Northern Hemisphere. It was a period where you had a kind of a mini ice age.
In central Florida, yet another sinkhole has opened up, threatening an entire neighborhood. So far, it's 100 feet wide and 30 feet deep, forcing the evacuation of 4 homes in Spring Hill.
Witnesses say the sinkhole appeared without warning.
Where the earth just went straight up in the air. It exploded up in the air, straight up, and dirt and everything, and then fell down.
An urgent situation continuing in the Pacific Northwest. We have 19 major wildfires now burning out of control, charring nearly 1 million acres already. The most serious of all now is the largest wildfire in the history of Washington state.
4 separate fires sparked by lightning exploded 10 times over on Friday and is now one massive inferno, torching more than 230,000 acres and burning up to 200 homes. Crews are creating critical fire perimeters to stop the now more than 370 square miles of flames.
This is a firestorm beyond human imagination.
1,700 firefighters on the ground, including the Air National Guard, and more firefighters are on the way. And tonight, the first loss of life. A 67-year-old man died trying to save his own home.
From Uttarakhand, where the situation is not getting any better, the inclement weather has hampered the rescue efforts, and over 5,000 people are stranded as heavy rains and possibility of landslides and mountain collapses looms large.
It was an act of nature that killed at least 2 people and injured 36 on Virginia's eastern shore. A tornado ripped through a campground this morning.
More than 1,300 people were at the Cherrystone family campground when the storm hit, many of them children. Witnesses say the sky turned black and started dumping hail the size of golf balls.
Flash floods, lightning strikes and hailstorms have left parts of Sussex, Essex and London underwater. The freak weather affected railways across the region. Trains were unable to stop at Worthing Station because of flash flooding there, as some areas saw almost half a month's worth of rainfall in just 1 hour.
Parts of New England are just starting to clean up after a violent storm today, including a rare tornado in Revere, Massachusetts, just north of Boston. On the other side of the country, wildfires forced hundreds of people from their homes, and there was a deadly lightning strike on a Southern California beach.
This was the first time a tornado had touched down in this part of Massachusetts since record-keeping began in 1950.
The EF2 tornado came without warning and left a trail of downed trees and power lines, ripping the roofs off some homes while sparing others.
In Nevada, water became the enemy. Flash flooding dropping more than 2 inches per hour in spots, filling the streets with debris and black mud from a burn scar.
That cold front that's been causing all those problems in the east has also been lowering temperatures in the region. And James, here in New York, only 3 times this summer have temperatures risen above 90 degrees.
A strong earthquake shook much of eastern Mexico on Tuesday, but there were no reports of damage or injury. The U.S. Geological Survey said the magnitude 6.3 quake was centered in the Gulf Coast state of Veracruz.
This should be the height of summer in western Germany. Instead, heavy storms have brought torrential rain and flooding. These were the scenes in the city of Bonn. Cellars of homes have been flooded out. Cars have been stranded, forcing their owners to abandon them in the streets as the water rises. Weather forecasters say some parts have had as much rain in a single day as they'd have expected for the whole month, 5 times over.
2 people, including a 72-year-old man, have drowned in Romania after torrential rains hit the region.
Water levels are said to have reached 10 feet in places after 3 days of torrential rain. The floodwaters raged across 4 counties in central and southwestern Romania.
As environmental authorities said, rivers
were
in the
hit.
affected areas rose to levels only seen every 200 years.
In Croatia, the Zadar Islands have been pummeled with 300 litres of rain per square metre over the past 24 hours. Cars and buses were dragged through towns by the sheer force of the water. However, by noon, the situation had somewhat calmed, with the floods beginning to recede. In Belgium, the residents of Ytre in Walloon-Brabant were also hit by flash floods when violent storms struck the region. Floodwaters left cars stacked atop each other, and 400 people were evacuated from their homes as a precaution. Elsewhere in Europe, floods have claimed 3 lives in Germany. Bulgaria reported 1 death and 1 person missing after heavy rains hit the central region. More bad weather is expected as a code red alert remains active in both Romania and Bulgaria.
And new at 6, dead fish by the thousands, and as of right now, there is no cause.
Fish are washing up in the FARRAKHAN Marsh, Lake Sinisippi, and the Rock River.
They're sick. They're obviously infected with something.
Wisconsin DNR fish biologist Laura Stremick-Thompson told me they found bacteria in the water. Oddly, it's only affecting carp, a hardy fish that usually can fight off that bacteria.
What this kind of tells us is that there's something going on with the common carp that most likely is suppressing their immune system, and they are unable to fight off this bacteria.
In Santa Cruz with an anchovy invasion. First it was white croakers, then sardines. Today, thousands upon thousands of dead anchovies turned up in the Santa Cruz harbor. The latest marine phenomena in the Monterey Bay.
To the latest efforts to clean up the Santa Cruz yacht harbor. Earlier in the week, millions of anchovies suffocated and died in the water. And 3 days later, that cleanup is still continuing.
An entire village buried under a massive mudslide. Torrential rains triggered the landslide in western India.
82 people have been confirmed dead. But even as bodies are being pulled out of the mud and the debris, the question is being asked: are other villages in the area under threat, and should evacuation be a priority?
17 other villages in the area could face the same risk, according to sources in the local administration.
Emergency workers are out in the streets of Istanbul, Turkey this day, cleaning up parts of the city after a storm caused flash flooding. And this. Not quite sure why people were still videotaping with their cell phones and not taking cover, but that's a tornado winding its way through the city. Local media say no serious damage reported from that so far, but the heavy winds washed out roads and stranded vehicles.
We're taking cover because I think they probably don't see that every day, but nevertheless, it's a terrifying scene. You don't know how strong that's going to be. You don't know where it's headed.
The death toll from the earthquake which struck southeast China continues to rise. Almost 600 people have been confirmed dead and more than 240,000 people injured.
Footage from surveillance cameras shows the moment the quake struck at 4:30 on a Sunday afternoon, when many people would have been at home. Those that could rushed to the safety of the outdoors.
More than 12,000 houses were also destroyed and 30,000 more were damaged.
This aerial footage shows the large number of collapsed buildings in the Yunnan province of China after a 6.3 earthquake hit on Sunday.
Communications are reported to be seriously affected, and some roads have been blocked by landslides.
At exactly 12 on Tuesday, South Africa shook. Seismologists were monitoring data from their testing stations of South Africa's biggest earthquake in 40 years.